All right, well, welcome everyone. I will tune us in here. Hi everyone, this is Trent Blizzard and Kristen Blizzard, and we're kicking off our webinar tonight with Zachary Mazi. Wave hi there. Kristen is, I think, going to just be watching and helping out. She has a pretty bad cold today and sounds a little bit like a frog, and her ears are plugged up, so I think she's just going to kind of stay in the background there and try to answer any questions that come up as they come up. So we are trying to stream on to Facebook. I don't know if it's going or not. If anyone's watching this, just as an FYI, we'll have it up on YouTube within about 24 hours, a copy of it. So it'll be available. Now, when we start, I guess I'd kind of like to just talk a little bit about Zachary and where we met. We met last year at Soma Camp, and I sat in on a conference, a session.
Yeah.
What's that?
Still 2020. It feels like last year, but it was actually the beginning.
That was before the year went to hell in a handbasket.
Several years ago in 2020.
Although I will say flying home from that event was when we were starting to hear about this whole COVID thing was right after that event. And,
yeah, right.
We sat in on one of your sessions on mycophagy, and it was utterly fascinating. And we got to hang out with you. And then after the event, do a little mushroom hunting.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty beneficial because I happened to have that cooking gig across the street, basically, from where you guys had decided to go and stay anyway.
Right,
So
Sea Ranch. So we went up to Sea Ranch for a couple of days, and you came over and hung out. You happened to be in the neighborhood, and then we were working on this cookbook, and you agreed to contribute some of your recipes to it, which are awesome, and we're excited about. And just from there, now we stay in touch, and I'm excited that we get to really feature your story today in our webinar. So
it's been a year.
yeah. Now, the other bits of house cleaning here for everybody, or housekeeping, I should say, is we do have a chat. You can see it there in Zoom. You feel free to chat if you have any questions. Make sure you direct them at the panelists, and we will monitor those, and I'll make sure I feed those to Zach as they come up. Good, it looks like it works there. Now we're supposed to be on Facebook Live. I don't know if that's actually working or not right now. I'm getting a note that it says, sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. I don't know what that means or why, but if it's there, let me know. I see Julie Schreiber over there on Facebook leaving a comment. I'm hoping, Julie, you can watch this right now. Julie was another person we met at that same event who's also in the cookbook. And,
you just met Julie? That's amazing.
Yeah, between the two of you, that's a lot of mushroom cooking talent sharing the screen here. So
I'm looking for your live. It doesn't show it on your Facebook page, so I'm not sure where that's supposed to be.
Who knows? Oh, Julie said she's watching, so we must be.
Oh no, there it is.
We must be working.
Yeah, I can see you live. There it is.
It runs a few seconds late, so there is a delay on that. So let's get going on this. Get going on this right now. If you tell us where you are and what the heck you're doing there.
Sure. Well, I am in Chiang Mai, Thailand. For those who don't know, that is in northern Thailand. Thailand is mostly landlocked, even though most people think of it as beaches. It's the large majority of the country itself is actually surrounded by Laos, Cambodia, and Burma in the north. And Chiang Mai is probably about 100 kilometers only from the border of Burma up north. And so it's a mountainous area of Thailand, and a very unique place in terms of the country itself. So, and actually from just 2 weeks after we were hanging out, or 1 week really, after we were hanging out in Sea Ranch, we flew to Thailand, and we have been here ever since.
Yeah, it's not like you got stuck or anything, right?
Well, we did get stuck actually. Initially, we had come for a wedding and a small music festival, and the day before the music festival, Thailand banned all gatherings. Thailand was the second country in the world to report COVID infection. And so there was some worry that this would be one of the major areas that got hit, but it locked down really quickly. And as of right now, there's been maybe, I think they say there's been one COVID community transfer since May 26th, but that really doesn't make sense because you would need to have two at least. So it seems like that might be just, who knows? Anyway, no COVID since May here.
You're safe.
Yeah, everyone's safe here. It's been amazing.
What's up with the 555 texts?
So I've been learning Thai, and the word for Thai, or the word for five in Thai is ha. And so the kids here, when they, instead of texting LOL, they text 555 and ha ha ha. Or several, or 7 5s in a row if it's really funny.
Now, and I know you've been doing a lot of Thai mushroom studying there, and we're gonna come back to more of that down the road here in a few minutes. But I'd like to get everybody on the same page here with, you're doing some really good webinars coming up. Do you think you could run us through that schedule real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, the month of October is pretty loaded. Yeah, I put together a talk. Actually, just before we left the States, my computer had a meltdown and I lost all of my talks. Well, I didn't lose them. I have them on my hard drive, but I don't have access to them. And, you know, we were only going to be here temporarily. So not having the Mycophagy talk, not having some of these other talks that I've been known for at Soma, I had to create something new. So I put together edible mushrooms of the Lana Kingdom, and the Lana Kingdom is basically where I am now. The Lana Kingdom actually had an independent king until 1939, even though it was a vassal state of Thailand. And so this area of northern Thailand is unique culturally, linguistically, and has been for a long time. So my new talk is edible mushrooms of the Lana Kingdom, which basically talks about cooking techniques, food, all kinds of stuff. And so I'm presenting to several of the Northwest mycology groups from, Yakima. I presented already to, well, actually Minneapolis. Yeah, it's been quite a tour. So Cascade Mycological Association in November. And who else is on there? It's early here. Sorry.
Yeah. Arizona, you've got Central Oregon, Snohomish, Yakima Valley, Arizona, and Cascade Mycological Society all coming up in the next month.
Yeah. They are all very excited to book while the mushrooms are still popping. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Cool. Yeah, we're doing one. We're doing the Mount Pisgah one.
Cool.
In November.
I grew up hiking in Mount Pisgah. That was like my childhood hiking zone. I knew nothing about mushrooms at the time, unfortunately. So I'm sure
now, we got a couple shout outs here. We got Philip Mitchell in Minneapolis, Minnesota watching, and Kathy Conroy with Bubba and Kat are also on the hook here.
Virtual
welcome. Before we also get into mushrooms and foraging, especially on the Portland area, a couple personal questions. About your personal life. You had some big things happening.
Oh, that was nothing. Yeah. So we, well, to continue the story, we came over to a beachside sort of resort area of Thailand for this festival, just as all gatherings were canceled. And they basically said, you have to stay at your hotel until further notice. And so we actually got stuck in this place for 7 weeks during sort of the height of the pandemic with all the unknowns. And to make matters better, in front of our small group of friends, I asked Kim to marry me. I've been carrying the ring around the whole time, so that was pretty funny to watch the world collapsing around and then to throw that anchor of love in, and it was well received. So my fiance Kim is here in Thailand with me, and we are open to pushing that wedding back until we can have all of our friends meet from all over the world in one place and not on Zoom.
I hear it back there. I thought
those who have the story, I did find the ring mushroom hunting. Literally diamond ring, found it in the dirt.
Really? That's perfect.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Hunting for morels, actually. So keep foraging. Interesting things pop up.
Yeah, especially with foraging with you. I won't get into the details, but you are one of the most fascinating people to forage with that we have done. I totally look forward, and so does Kristen, to like being in the woods with you and hopefully with Kim next time and finding
Yeah.
mushrooms. That was a total hoot with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Um,
that.
um, all right. Well, I guess enough of the kind of chit chat. Maybe we should jump into a big serious question,
Sure.
which is you started foraging in Columbia Gorge in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm hoping to pick your brain a little bit and have you share with the people that are watching where and when to find mushrooms around the Portland area.
Yeah.
And maybe just tell us how you got started there.
Well, I actually got started foraging plants first. I was unaware of mushrooms. This would be 2001. It was like not long after 9/11, and another hippie friend of mine and I were convinced that Bush was going to destroy the world. We didn't know what was in store for 2020, but we decided that we needed to learn all the medicinal plants and all the useful plants in the Columbia Gorge, which is, for those who don't know, stretches up from like 400 feet above sea level to almost 4,000 feet above sea level on cliffs. And so it has a really wide range of biodiversity and a large, from lower elevation to high. So we started foraging there for plants mostly, and started a company to make extracts. And simultaneously, I was introduced to Oregon's very special mushroom, the psilocybe azarescen, which is the most potent psychedelic mushroom on the planet. And finding those, and then finding, parrot mushrooms and chicken of the woods and lobsters, although at the time I had no idea what they were, I was like, there's something more going on here. There's blue mushrooms and green mushrooms and orange mushrooms and red mushrooms. And so I started getting interested in that. And by the time I went to culinary school in 2005, sort of realizing that cooking was going to be my future, that mushrooms and I had sort of become one. I mean, once you find your first porcini and realize you can eat it, I think it's like game over.
Yeah, porcini.
Yeah. So, and frankly, the gorge doesn't have a ton of mushrooms. It's very rocky. It's a basalt lava. There's a lot of lava, and so it's not the best place for mushrooms itself until you get up onto the plateau, and you can hike right up to the Pacific Crest Trail in the gorge as well. And then once you're up on those plateaus at like 35 to 4,500 feet, you can find chanterelles, lobsters, chicken of the woods, porcinis. Although the porcinis tend to be more on the coast of Oregon. Yeah, I mean, really, the hunting for the azarescens was the opening gambit, and they happen to grow in an area where you can find tons of other edibles as well, which I tried to instruct my friends on it. They're all paranoid about the rangers, who are actually quite friendly in Oregon. But you walk out of the woods with a backpack full of porcinis and bluets, and they're like, "Look at, oh, good find," no questions asked. So,
It's interesting when we worked on our book and interviewed a lot of foragers, how many serious foragers got started by hunting for the psilocybe mushroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a connection there that you can't explain, and I think a lot of people who have been out with foragers like myself, we have a connection with the woods, and whether or not that could have been there without psilocybe is hard to say. I mean, there's an opening and a connection to nature that you can discover only within yourself, and I think that if once you find that, the fascination with what's out there becomes sort of infinitely more pulling. Mm-hmm. I would say.
Well put.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, what if we kind of look at the Portland area and talk about maybe seasonally, like when spring comes around, and what do you look for and where do you go in the spring?
Yeah. Do you want me to share my screen? You want to look at the map while we do this?
Yeah. Let's look at a map and
do this guy. Where did we go here? I had maps on here briefly, didn't I?
Yeah, I see it. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, well, so This is Portland for those who are well, this is Oregon. This is quite a bit of Oregon for those who are not familiar with the West Coast. And in the springtime, I'm still not convinced that I want to eat verpas. So that's a mushroom that quite a few people eat. But in the springtime, basically, all along let's see if I can, how do you pull up the pointer again? Do you show me that one?
Annotate, you go up to...
And stamp, right? I can put a little thing on here. So up here, oh, there we go. Look at that. Sorry, guys, I'm new to Zoom. I'm figuring this all out. Yeah, so in the springtime, it's a lot of morels, and Portland gets both kinds of morels. And I know you one of the things that fascinated about me was that you spend all of your winter not mushroom hunting making morel maps. And those are mostly the burn morels, right? So
Yeah.
the Oregon also has the morels that grow with cottonwoods in the banks of the rivers, the spring morels. And all along the Columbia River, and which is right here. Let's see. So this is the Columbia River. This is the third largest drainage in the world, I believe, after the Euphrates and the Nile. The fifth largest after the Amazon, Euphrates, Nile, and there's one more, maybe the Yellow River.
China.
Yeah, massive drainage basin, and what the area we were talking about before is here. This is the Columbia Gorge. The resolution's not great, but you can see it goes up from almost 400 feet to almost 3,700 feet here. But all along the gorge is cottonwood trees and mud flats, and you can find morels and verpas out there in the springtime. Oregon's interesting because it gets quite cold, and it is, in February or March or in April when you go to Oregon, it is barren. There are no leaves on the trees, there are no flowers, there's nothing much happening. And so after about December, Oregon's mushroom season is all but gone, unless you know how to dig up truffles, which I never really figured out how to do. And it doesn't start again really almost until May. And in May is when you start seeing the spring morels, which are the big blonde morels. They can be 14, 15 inches tall. They're just huge, great stuffers. And so you find those during the springtime, and then summer gets quite hot, and you don't really have a ton of mushrooms. Now chanterelle season can start quite early, especially on the coast. So when you're coming out here, so Oregon is divided by two main mountain ranges. We have the Cascade Mountains here, which get quite tall. Mount Hood is 11,000 feet. And then you have the Coast Range, which is right here. And between that is where 90% of the population of Oregon lives, which is in the valley, the Willamette Valley, maybe 80% of the population. This whole Coast Range, and you can see that Oregon unfortunately suffers from a logging infestation. You can see all of the clear cuts. It's hard to go anywhere now and actually find forest that remains untouched. But all along the coast here is moist because of the mist, and so the chanterelles, even if we haven't had a lot of rain, the chanterelles start growing sometimes as early as late July, which is pretty amazing. You'll get a couple blooms all along the coast, slightly on the cliffs.
So then you're like out in May getting yellow morels, and maybe into early June. And without,
sorry, I guess I missed it. Yeah, in summer into June, then you can go over to the Cascades for your burn morels, in the areas that have burned the previous years or a couple years before, and that you can get morels until about August, I would say, if you're intrepid. Morels, for me, have been a little more difficult. I like places I can return to the same place every year, so hunting morels has been a bit of a challenge for me. It always feels like you need like 2 or 3 days in one hunt, to go out, camp, explore, go to higher elevations, explore. Like going out for one day for morels, it's already going to be a 4 or 5 hour drive to get to where you're going.
Yeah. I think I'm more especially interested in like the urban Portland, someplace you can take a day trip out of Portland and
yeah, I mean, that's the Coast Range for sure. The Coast Range is an hour away. And so basically leaving from Portland, taking any of these main roads here, Highway 26, I found a ton of chanterelles off the coast of Highway 26. Don't look at this spot right here. That's not a spot where I found chanterelles at all. Don't look at this one. Yeah, I mean, this is all chanterelles, and it's when it goes, it is like carpets. You know, it is carpets of chanterelles. I used to, in some of the higher seasons, I was able to purchase them when I wasn't finding enough for less than $2 a pound. At some of the
You go
buyer.
over the top of the coastal range and come down on the kind of
Yeah.
west facing side usually.
Yeah, I mean, they actually grow in all of it. You know, the coast range is short enough that the whole side is moist. So the fog rolls in on this side, and that's early on. You get some of the coastal morels start popping up, but you know, by mid-September, they are everywhere here. You know, everywhere. I mean, we found them on cuts on the road off of up to Astoria. You just pull off into a little camping area, and there they are, like boom, all along the side of the cut. Or you can find, I mean, they're literally everywhere here. And then as it gets a little later, when you get into October, they move up into the Cascade area.
Okay.
And, so, and then you can find the big Oregon chanterelles that are like just monster.
Are those all the same species?
I don't believe so. I know that Siberius, the Cantharellus siberius, is one of them. I have to admit, I'm not a mycologist. I'm not up on the most recent terms. I'm remembering things like Formosus, and then there's the white chanterelle that you will find up there as well. And of course, yellowfoots. There's quite a few yellowfoots, yellow feet, both on the coast and in the streams and the Cascades. Those are some of my favorite to find, although that's because of Mendocino.
We love finding the yellowfoot. In fact, that's
that
high on our priority list because we've eaten almost all of our dried ones this winter.
Well, I happen to know where all of my dried mushrooms are right now. They're not with me. Although I did just find black trumpet mushrooms here in they have a Whole Foods like grocery store here. And I found a pound of black trumpet mushrooms for $100 for sale here in Chiang Mai, Thailand. It was $100 for a pound of dried mushrooms. Now I'm like, how do I get my dried mushrooms out here? Like, that's
maybe worth a fortune.
Yeah, I mean, so, and to put that in perspective, in Thailand, the Thai baht, so $100 is 3,000 baht. And if Kim and I go out to eat at the local market, we might spend 150 baht for both of us to eat. So 3,000 baht is a significant chunk of change here. You know, and so while it's like, wow, $100 a pound, you hear it's like, well, that's a lot of money to spend on black trumpet mushrooms, but amazing. I found black trumpets, porcinis in the market. So I'm not, you know, there's nothing lacking here. There's no lack of variety. I haven't personally found black trumpets actually in Portland or in Oregon, although I'm told, which makes sense to me, that once you come down here to Southern Oregon, you can find them down in Brookings. Now, Brookings in this area is the only place where the redwoods stretch all the way up into Oregon.
Yeah, we found them down there before starting around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and the black trumpets tend to be in the later season and into the California season, of course.
Yeah.
So
back to Portland, then we've got the chanterelles are popping, hopefully kind of early in maybe late July.
Yeah, up on the coast there.
What else do you start getting into then as the summer goes on?
As the summer goes on, I get into, you know, floating on creeks and camping and whatnot. There's not, you know, as I said, morels haven't really dragged me in, so I haven't been as dedicated in the summertime. In Oregon summers, you have to understand, at least traditionally, this isn't as much the case with climate change, but Oregon summers used to be the 3 months of sunshine that we would get. And so people are outdoors the whole time, and it can get quite dry during the summer, and just a lot of play and recreational activity. And then when everyone else starts complaining about the rain, that's when the mushroom hunters start getting excited.
Okay. So that's when you want to get serious in that area is when the rains come in, like early September, maybe?
I mean, it used to be that way. I remember as a kid, it was by Halloween, it was always raining because Halloween trick or treating was a terrible night because it was always raining by late October. Although now the last few years I've been in Portland, sometimes it doesn't rain almost until Thanksgiving. So things are changing, and it's hard to shore that up. But like I said, the coastal chanterelles tend to grow starting from August, although maybe not in the flushes that you would find in the Cascades. But like a lot of the Oregon mycological camps will be in October. That's generally like, and I guess that's a great way to measure sort of the height of the season, right? So the Brighton Bush Mushroom Camp, the Central Oregon. In fact, I'm presenting to the Central Oregon Mycological Society. I was a demo chef last year in October for the mushroom festival that they did in Sun River, and that is down here where these little stars are. And Christian Schwartz presented as well for that year. So yeah, I'd say it's more September, October, November is sort of the height of mushroom season in Oregon, which is really useful because early December is when the butterboleates start popping out in California. So you just move south and you can hang out in California until March or April. So picking mushrooms, at which point you go down to Mexico, and Mexico's mushroom season is May through September. So then back up to Oregon and you got your circuit.
Nice. I think you were talking a little bit about the urban foraging and the kind of the local forest authorities. Can you fill us in on that?
Let's see. Can you refresh me a bit on that one? I mean, there's definitely there's places in Oregon where you can go. I haven't really, you can find shaggy manes are popping up around Portland and some of the more urban areas and whatnot. Some puffballs from time to time, but I try to stay away from urban foraging other than say like Sauvie Island. This is a big spot for morels. There's lots of cottonwoods and lots of beaches and sort of sandy soil here. And then I left out Matsutakis. I've found some sometimes in Portland, but it's a highly contested area. And the thing with hunting in Oregon is that every forest, every managed forest has its own ranger station, and that ranger station issues permits to pick mushrooms. And if you don't get a permit, which are free, you can have, and this is the weirdest designation for mushrooms, you can have 1 gallon of mushrooms per vehicle. Well, I don't know who measures mushrooms in gallons. I've found cauliflower mushrooms that are larger than a gallon, so I'm not really sure. Does that mean I have to like trim it down to like make it fit into a gallon jar? I don't really know why they would do a gallon. And if you get a permit, which is free, then each person can collect 1 gallon of mushrooms, and that's generally the same. But you need to contact your local ranger station and get permission, or just assume that you have the permission to get just the 1 gallon of mushrooms for your car. I don't know any mushroom hunter that abides by that rule. I mean, everyone goes to see the rangers, but I mean, if you find 40 pounds of chanterelles, I don't think you're only going to take a gallon. But let's see, you asked me a question and I wandered off.
The forest authorities and stuff. I know we've found that kind of every state forest has different rules, and
right.
Yeah,
I mean, in California, you can't pick in state parks, right? So just period. There's no application process. You just can't. So I was saying, and then Matsutakis in particular, in order to pick Matsutakis, it's an additional permit that costs almost $75, I think, to declare that you're going to be picking them. And that's not even a seller's license. That's just because they get so overpicked in the areas. And I've found them more up in the Cascade area, sort of in the leftover ash from some of the volcanic explosions, the sandy ashy soil. But David Aurora had been talking about Florence, Oregon, which is on the coast.
Yeah, that's where we hunt.
Yeah, so down in Florence in the sand dunes. Florence is known, you can kind of see on the map, this is all dunes through here. And so the Matsutakis tend to grow in the sandy dune soil under the coastal pines.
Yeah, that's what there's an interesting thing there. The rule, and by the way, we're doing a webinar on Monday on just Matsutake, and we're going to be talking a lot about especially Oregon Matsutake. you can buy for the Siuslaw, the dune forest there. They only offer a limited number of commercial permits. I think they're $200 each, and maybe they give 200 of them or something. Otherwise, you can only have 5 of those matsutakis in your possession.
Per person or per vehicle? Do you know?
Per person.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
that's wild.
yeah, 5 little buttons, and your day is over.
So basically, you go with your friend, you find more than 5, you leave them there, and you run out and buy your permit, and then come back and collect while they stay.
Yeah, you can only buy a permit if you live there, I think, and they offer limited numbers, so you can't actually go. Like, I can't go buy a permit to pick there. And then I guess people, they sell out, I think, because they're only
I'm sure they do. I recently saw it was sort of a come to money story. A hippie out of Eugene had decided that he would host specifically Japanese mushroom enthusiasts, and he would do everything from booking their flight to their hotel to driving them out to show them where to pick matsutakis, and then send them on home for like a cool price of like $7,000 a person.
Wow.
And ended up making quite a bit of money and having some really awesome contacts in Japan who were just so excited to come and see the matsutakis that they'd been getting, shipped, but now can actually see them growing in the wild. So, in lieu of picking them, I think some intrepid entrepreneurs have figured out how to make it profitable anyway.
Okay. Let's see. So then, as we work, we work through the season. We get into the late fall. That's when all these mushrooms happen with the rains. How about porcinis? Where do you get your porcinis up there in that northern Oregon in the fall?
Luckily for us on the Oregon coast, I'll show so we can get in here. The Oregon coast is from the beach to the up into the mountains. Basically, what you get first is you get this sand layer here. Right after that, you get beach grass. And right behind the beach grass is a layer of pine trees, or a row of pine trees that extends from Astoria all the way down to the bottom of the coast, and porcinis grow with every single one of those trees. So you have 300 miles of pine trees, and if you can hear the ocean from where you are picking, you will find porcinis. They are everywhere. And my favorite hunting was driving around in one of the small towns north of Tillamook, driving around and hunting porcinis from my car, just driving through the neighborhoods. Yeah. And it's like, people have the pine trees in their neighborhoods, and they'll be like, bam, like 2 gigantic porcinis just popping up right
on the side of the roads, right? Just
right on the side of the road. Yeah. You literally drive around the streets of these small towns and in people's yards, and they don't even know what they are. And you get you get 2 kinds of porcinis, right? You get the edgeless and then the grand edgeless, which is a little more textured and more of a brick red cap. And I have gotten myself into trouble where I'm cooking for a retreat out there, and I had to have a friend bring me a dehydrator from Portland, because I'd found so many porcinis that I couldn't possibly use them, and can't not pick them. Sorry, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
We call them road chinis.
Road chinis, yeah, exactly.
Definitely like to spot.
I call it hunting at 60 miles an hour. You're literally just driving around this town, and you're like, oh, there's one. Oh, there's 7. All right, this is amazing.
Well, I'm lucky because Kristen gets car sick, especially on the coastal highway there. So I'm always just like locked onto the side of the road looking for those mushrooms, the big red caps.
I think
he's driving.
The first mushroom I saw from the car driving by was a gigantic chicken of the woods on a tree, and I was like, "Wait, you can see mushrooms from the car?" It's like, hang on, this changes everything. But I think a big backpack and a bicycle would be really great. And I'm not sure that if you're not in the forest itself, if you're actually in the incorporated towns, I don't think that the rules apply as far as picking mushrooms go.
No, they don't. No, they don't apply.
So, I used to cook for a retreat, and I think we've done 7 retreats in this one house north of Tillamook, and I can walk out an hour before I need to start prepping for dinner and go pick some fresh porcinis for the meal. It's like that easy, and there's just so many out there.
Now, down in the dunes, it seems like we find them about 2 weeks after that first big rain.
Yes,
which I think maybe happened about 10 days ago.
Okay, great. Well, you are in Oregon and it's time to go and check on the pines, I highly recommend driving around in the little towns and just checking out. I mean, the pine trees are everywhere down there, and they literally are those coastal pines that grow right on the edge. I mean, chances are if you drive around, you will see them all around Pacific. In fact, there's an area in Pacific City that I really wanted to check, and if somebody can go there and get pictures of it, I will show you exactly where it is, because I saw it in a time that it wasn't. Oops, that's not what I want.
We'll be out there in 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let
we're
me
gonna
show
hit
you
it
what
in
you're
2
doing
weeks.
then.
Well, we'll be out there in 2 weeks and 2 days.
And zooming in here, it's the Pacific City Campground. Basically, this
Yeah.
this area right here, and the Webb County campground is actually quite awesome. But like this entire area is all huckleberries and pine trees, which has usually been an amazing area for porcinis. And my feeling from the vibe of the campground was that there's not mushroom hunters. There was a lot of RV, recreational ATV type folks. So I can't recommend enough having some beer at the Pelican Brewery and some fried oysters, and then walking across the street out into this forest of the campground, because I think there's going to be a ton of porcinis there.
Yeah. Okay. We had a good question on the Mazis. Now, our experience has been we only find them in the dunes with the pine trees and the sand there. Do you find them on the coast farther up? Have you, or do you know about finding them outside of that kind of 60-mile stretch of dunes there on the coast?
Let me think if I've ever seen them. Where have we found them before? I feel like I've found them like up in like Sand Lake area, like, because there's other dunes and other sandy areas, but I know Florence is known for them. My biggest hauls have come, like I said, from the Cascades, and more of the ashy, where when St. Helens blew, it filled several creeks with a lot of ash, so you get these layers of ash and sand and sort of rocky soil. So that's been where I've gone myself. So yeah, and I know this is a sacrilege. Matsutakis are not my favorite mushroom, and I don't make a priority of looking for them.
Man. All right, let's end this. It's been a good chat, my friend.
No, more for you. More for you.
That's right. More for everybody now that you're in Thailand and not in Oregon. That was great. Thanks. I think if it's okay, we might want to kind of switch over to a whole new topic.
Sure.
One of my favorites after hanging out with you is this idea of mycophagy. Why don't you tell us like what that is and why do we care?
Well, if you eat mushrooms, you are performing mycophagy. Mycophagy means the eating of mushrooms. And so, for example, I sort of follow me on this one. There's a brand new, within the last 5 years, they've discovered a Thai white truffle. And it is a different species than the white truffle, but it is equal in flavor, from what I hear, to the Italian white truffle. So this is a big deal, because this means that in northern Thailand they may be able to cultivate white truffles and have another economic sort of boom, not to mention culinary tourism, if that ever happens again. What was I saying? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Mycophagy. You were gonna.
Oh yeah. So I wrote the Truffle Society of Oregon and let them know, hey, this is what's happening. And his question to me was, who are the mycophagists? And what he meant by that was who is digging up these mushrooms, because that's a really good indicator of just the species. So the mycophagists are anything that eats mushrooms. So if you eat plants, meat, and mushrooms, you're an omnivore. If you eat meat, you're a carnivore. If you eat plants, you're a vegetarian. If you eat only mushrooms, you're a mycophagist. As someone does not identify with being a mycologist, which carries a hefty weight of really understanding scientific terms and up on the jargon and understanding like where the certain things are, and it's really hard to stay up on constantly changing scientific names now that they're genetically identifying these mushrooms. So I wanted to popularize the term mycophagy and consider myself a mycophagist because I'm interested in the edible aspects of mushrooms. And so I'm into the eating of mushrooms. And because it's a scientific term, for me, what that means is actually diving into mushrooms culinarily in a way that we've never done before, which is really understanding. We find a ton of cookbooks. Here's what you cook chanterelles with. Here's how you cook porcinis. But to me as a chef who's interested in science, I have yet to find a popular cookbook, or any cookbook for that matter, that mentions the volatile chemicals in a porcini. Why does a porcini taste like a porcini? Why does a chanterelle taste like a chanterelle? And once we find out what those volatile chemicals are, what the protein content is, or what the different fat contents, or all the different chemicals that cause gelling, or we just don't know. People, whatever this mycophobia that has informed people, we have broken down everything about coffee, cheese, chocolate, wine. We know every single aspect of volatility. We know when wine goes off, you can detect. Incidentally, sotalone, which is what makes candy caps smell like maple syrup, is a breakdown chemical that happens in red wine when it starts to go bad.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Just like, remember that thought. I know it's early in the morning.
Got it.
And I only stopped you because right when you said that, we got a question about candy caps. And can you find those in Northern Oregon or around PDX, Portland?
Yeah. It wasn't until fall that I found candy caps in Oregon. And that I'm not going to show you again, but that little star that I circled is where I found them.
So in the coastal range.
Coastal range. Yeah, coastal range.
Late October?
Maybe even later. Yeah, it might have been even later.
Okay.
Yeah, it would have been around. No, it would have been around late. Yeah, mid October, I think. Is probably
that jives with my experience too. That said, I feel like unless you're really sharp, you walk by those things because they're just little brown mushrooms.
Right. Yeah.
They're so easy to ignore.
I wasn't even expecting to find them. Like I said, I found most of my experience in candy caps was down in Santa Cruz, in the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Santa Cruz coast, and then up in Mendocino in the Redwoods. The only reason I knew they were candy caps is because there was an entire field of them. Yeah. And it was like, wait a minute. And I don't know why this is. Maybe someone else can explain this to me, but the most delectable, delicious mushrooms don't show up just one at a time. You find several pounds of them at a time, it feels like. Whereas like some of the more interesting mushrooms, you're like, oh, that's cute, that's cute. You find just
or if you don't find a bunch, they're huge mushrooms, like a
right.
In the woods.
Right. Which, and it's interesting that the edible mushrooms tend to be the ones, when I'm out finding chanterelles, it's not like I'm finding equal amounts of russulas, or it's like chanterelles everywhere. And then a couple other mushrooms that are interesting. So I knew they were candy caps, smelled them immediately, and was like, holy crap, I just found a whole field of candy caps in Oregon, which I just wasn't expecting. But I would say, to answer the question specifically, around 2,800 to 3,200 feet, I think is about right. I'm trying to remember what the coast range is. It was at the peak. It was at the summit of the coast range. So if you're out there in Oregon, like go up to where you go up and then start coming down, and at the summit of the coast range, that was where I was finding the candy caps.
We found them about maybe 500, 1,000 feet down from the summit.
Okay.
Near Florence.
Okay, great.
And the same thing in those fir trees.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many we walked by before we saw them. They're maybe a lot. I know we'll be back there this year looking for them.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
okay, so
I was in California for 6 years, and sort of that's when I came into my mushroom hunting, sort of like really fell into it. And so 2018 and 2019 were the last 2 seasons that I was in Oregon, and sort of opening my eyes again to what Oregon has that California doesn't have. And then was surprised myself to find candy caps, because I'd never heard of them until I went to California. So.
Yeah. One thing Oregon has is a lot more public land to hunt on than California.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the state park ban is really annoying in California. Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but so it
Sunset
goes.
Magazine had a big article, like I think it was like foraging in Big Sur, and I was kind of like, really? Like, is there a lot of territory there? How's that work for you?
Yeah.
All right. So back to the mycophagy, because that was just a timeout, because your statement coincided with
the question, right?
Perfectly. We're talking about volatile compounds, and I wonder if you would talk a little bit more about volatile compounds, and I think maybe umami and flavor, how that works.
Sure. Okay, well, let's leave umami out of it to start, because that So, well, real quick, the people out there should understand there's a difference between aroma and taste, right? Taste is what the tongue detects, and aroma is what the olfactory, the nose, and also in the mouth detect, and that those things together form flavor. So flavor is the combination of taste, which is generally recognized as salty, sweet, bitter, sour, and umami, five tastes. Although there's some current science that's showing that the tongue can actually recognize individual molecules such as amino acids and various things, which is pretty fascinating. So I think we have a lot to unpack in terms of how sensitive our mouth pits and nose bits are for identifying these chemicals. But the volatile chemical is what makes a carrot taste like a carrot, or smell like a carrot, or taste like a carrot. And so if you want to look up a flavor wheel, say of cheese or of wine or of coffee, you'll see that there are all kinds of different flavors that can be found inside of one cup of coffee. You might find one that says tart or apple or cherry or chocolate or vanilla. What they're talking about is specific volatile chemicals. And so a volatile chemical, rather than being like one thing, will be a whole suite. For example, porcinis have 53 volatile chemicals. Fresh porcinis have 53 volatile chemicals. Of those, probably 8 of them are the main aromas, and yet one little, our smell is so sensitive that even if it's 1% of the things are a volatile chemical, but it happens to be active, your sensory organs can detect that, and then the total sum of those things makes a porcini smell like a porcini. And if you want to see a good, I'll type it here actually, because this is a really cool, little overwhelming. Go to goodsense.com and check out this. This is an insane website. I'll see if I can't pull it up and share it. Let's see. So Good Sense is an aromatherapy. Is this the one? This might not be a Good Sense chemical company. Let's see. Sorry. It basically is the information system. Yeah, this is a massive encyclopedia of volatile chemicals, and they are basically chemical researchers that are informing just about every perfume company, scents company, food manufacturing company. And if you find a volatile chemical in a scientific paper, you can type it in here and it will tell you what it smells like, everything about its chemical constituency. And so, looking up some of the things in porcinis, you see that it's like green melon scent, or like the most wild things. And it'll tell you what they've been used in industrially. And it's an endless exploration. It's quite fun. So goodsensecompany.com is a lot of fun to just look at different volatile chemicals. And it is organic chemistry geeks, so be prepared to sort of have Wikipedia open at the same time. Yeah. But it's quite a journey to go on. And so what for me, what Mycophagy is, the book that I'm working on, is to put into layman's terms and delay terms what the volatile chemicals are in specific mushrooms, because what that informs us, flavor pairing theory says that if two foods share similar volatile chemical compounds in amount, they will pair together in our mouths, and it will taste like this thing goes together. A good example of that is to talk about umami. Parmesan cheese, tomatoes, bread baked at very high temperatures all develop some umami compounds that then taste like a synthesis in our mouth when we eat them. So why, margarita pizza, despite being so simple, is so delicious, is that all of the ingredients that go into it share similar compounds, and so it forms this synthesis in our mouth that we're like, that's amazing. How do I get more of that? So to talk about umami real quick. So umami was discovered about 100 years ago by a Japanese scientist, and it's named after a Japanese word that means satisfying flavor. And umami is actually 3 different molecules, just 3 molecules. It is the man, sorry, it's early morning stuff. It's the one found in meat and tomatoes and Parmesan, which is sort of the general umami flavor. There's one found in fish, which are the inosinates, and the fish develop it actually as a means to balance the osmotic pressure of salt water. So saltwater fish tend to have more of this amino. It's amino salt. Glutamate is what we're talking. MSG, right? Monosodium glutamate is sort of the commercial product, but glutamate is found in tomatoes, especially in the seeds and the skin. Thomas Keller made a point of peeling and seeding tomatoes, but then dehydrating that part and using that in stocks, because in a lot of French cooking you like discard the insides, you discard the skin when you concasse tomatoes, but that's actually where the most flavor is. So you have glutamate, and then in mushrooms you have, in dried shiitakes in particular, you have another umami flavor that only shows up in dried mushrooms, and that's guanylate. And then in fish you get inosinate, and those are umami molecules that your tongue actually detects, and what it causes the brain to say is, that is delicious, I would like more of that. And what it is the tongue identifying that there is protein in the food you're eating. And so, as protein constructed creatures, we need protein, and so our mouth recognizes that as essential foods. And so the umami is a way of detecting, all of the flavor, all of the major tastes are basically for us to interact with our environment in the most direct way. Bitter tends to be toxic, sour tends to be unripe and not nutritional, sweet tends to be ripe and have lots of nutrition, and umami tends to indicate protein. And so from, evolution ad nauseum, our sensory organs for how we intake our food has been tuned into the things that are beneficial for our body.
So some dried mushrooms then are going to have more of this flavor that we love. And some dried mushrooms don't change in flavor, like porcinis really change.
Yes.
Others, not so much.
Right.
But
yeah.
They're high in protein.
Yeah, that's true. What do you say? The drying changes things significantly for porcinis. It also concentrates them, right? So are 90% water by weight. But also the water tends to, as soon as you pick a mushroom, it starts to chemically change. And so there's some argument that aging your mushrooms just a little bit and allowing them to get a little older will actually develop the flavor. Drying, well, for example, with shiitakes, if they're dried, hydrating them in cold water overnight actually activates enzymes that if you throw them directly into boiling water will be destroyed at like 157 degrees. I'm making it up. It's right around there though. And so the temperature at which you are processing your mushrooms also makes a difference. So if you want enzymes to operate within a certain temperature range to bring out more of the flavors, because the enzymes will break down chemicals and highlight flavors, there's very specific ways to treat different mushrooms. And most of that is only available in scientific literature. So the Mycophagy project, the Mycophagy book project, which is what I'm working on, is to find those papers and put that information in a place where chefs and home cooks who are interested in science can actually dive deeper into what makes a mushroom taste like a mushroom, and then how to harness those individual flavors through precise techniques.
Do you have any, based on what you've learned, any like specific recommendations that we might want to look for? I'm especially interested in candy caps, morels, and porcinis. If you think
so candy caps are interesting. Candy caps don't produce the sotalone until they're dehydrated, and then re-exposed to water, which is really interesting. So the candy cap mushroom actually has to dry first and then be hydrated in some way to really create that candy cap flavor that you're so used to. So in terms of specific examples, in terms of, there's a lot of, I think umamiinfo.com is a Japanese website where they break down a lot of the chemicals, and they break down the range of temperatures at which different enzymes are working. So when we were doing dashi, which is a simple broth made with seaweed and often shiitakes, you soak them overnight in room temperature water and then bring that water up to a simmer. and let it simmer for a while. So it's like different stages of the mushroom allow you to bring out different flavors. And I think that's, in general, I think that's the issue with food, as we see once food is in the grocery store, it's sort of frozen in time. People don't realize that, spinach, for example, loses 50% of its vitamin C 24 hours after it's been picked. And so foods continue to be affected by chemical processes even after you've pulled them out of the ground or even after you've harvested them. If that weren't the case, we wouldn't dry age beef, say, for 28 days or 40 days, because the process allows the chemistry to continue, and it's the same with mushrooms. So the way that they're treated will change their flavor. So for example, in porcinis, I tend to, especially on the older ones, when you get the pore surface, a lot of people will scrape that off before dehydrating it. I scrape that off and dehydrate it separately and powder that. And I use that specifically for my porcini salt because it is incredibly flavorful. And, a tablespoon of porcini pore powder might be overpowering for a soup, but a couple teaspoons of porcini powder with salt might be exactly what you need to get the flavor that you really want out of that. So,
I saved a bunch of my pores and I dehydrated a bunch, but I froze a bunch fresh. I wonder how those will taste different. I haven't actually pulled them out and done the comparison test on those.
Well, you got to be careful with freezers and how you freeze them too, because a lot of fridges and freezers these days are sort of dehydrators as well. So they're pulling moisture out. So you don't get that thing. So if they're not sealed.
I pack mine in really high quality plastic, and I'm pretty uptight about that. No Ziploc bags.
Great. Yeah, I mean, this is all, it's, I think part of collecting this information is going to be reaching out to people like yourself and saying, what methods do you use? What's the thing? Because in order to
I think you know way more than me. I think what is
the more I know, the more I realize is I need a lab to really understand these,
how often we'll eat mushrooms and have different experiences where sometimes like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. And then later on, you're like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah,
like,
right.
There's a big difference between even the same mushroom. And I'm wondering now, like, it has a lot to do with what you're talking about, how it undergoes flavor changes based on storage and maybe how you're cooking it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that different temperatures activate, as I said, different enzymes. And as the enzymes in the mushrooms are working to break down, what Paul Stamets and others have showed us is that every single mushroom is a unique chemical. Every single fungi is a unique chemical manufacturing it's a factory. And so when you look, for example, a really great book out there to really sort of dive into this is Robert Rogers' The Fungal Pharmacy. He really breaks down, I'll put it here in the text thing. He really breaks down some of the suites of chemicals that are being explored specifically for medicinal mushrooms. But when you look at it, it's like every chemical in it is based on the scientific name of the mushroom. Like, as in these chemicals don't show up anywhere else in nature. And so each individual mushroom has this thousands of unique chemicals that can then be explored and harnessed for various cooking purposes. And I think this is, so the end goal for me would be to give mushrooms their viable place in every cookbook. I think the kitchens need to reorganize themselves so that we don't have mushrooms like lumped under the vegetable section, and that we have a meat section, fungi section, and a vegetable section in every cookbook. Because
and within the cookbook, you got to separate out every mushroom from each other. Like we did. Right. It's like I don't want recipes for mushrooms. I want recipes for black trumpets.
Exactly. Right. And beyond that, I think that when we start to examine that, we'll realize that we have partnered with fungi in cooking for a long time, and baking with yeast and cheese making and all kinds of fermentation. We're already using fungi, and it's just sort of distributed throughout the cookbook without you really realizing that that's there. And I think sort of a reorganization of the way that we approach the kitchen will allow us to give fungi their proper place in cooking, because it's actually a lot more common than we think. And mycophagy isn't just about each individual mushroom. It's about recognizing the importance of fungi in general, and realizing that meat and vegetables as we have them, split off evolutionarily from fungi, which was here first.
Yeah.
So
It
that's
also
sort of
probably speaks to the wisdom of the kind of cultures that have been cooking their native mushrooms
right.
for generations, where maybe they don't know exactly why, but they've figured out, hey, here's
Right.
how you dry a porcini,
Right.
and here's what you do with
Yeah.
the pores.
Yeah. What I've found here in Thailand is that until I speak better Thai, I probably will not, which I'm working on, actually. So, chop head mac. That means I like mushrooms a lot. There's a ton of mushrooms on the roadside stalls. There's a ton of mushrooms in the markets here, especially in the outside of Chiang Mai markets and some of the more rural markets. And you don't see them anywhere. I mean, wild mushrooms, and you don't see them anywhere in the restaurants or anywhere at the food side stall. So what that means is that people are taking them home to eat them.
Yeah.
By the tens of kilos. I mean, there's so many mushrooms, and so next year my goal is, mushroom season is just coming to a close here. It's the May through September. It's the rainy season here, and so as it comes to a close, I'm going to pull back into more writing and exploring sort of the literature on Thai mushrooms. But my goal is to speak Thai as fluently as possible by next mushroom season, and actually go out with some of these foragers and come home with them to where they're cooking the mushrooms at home and see what they're into.
Now that's a good segue, and we are kind of bumping them up into some
Yeah,
Thailand. And I
talk.
want to talk about Thailand now, but first, when you get back into the States and get your Mycophagy hard drive going again,
Yeah.
can you do a presentation, what's called just Mycophagy, and we can talk about this for like an hour plus?
100%. Yeah, actually, I would like to. I'm going to see if my friend can actually send me my hard drive or hook it up to his computer and send me, because our year visa started 2 days ago, so we're not.
Because I'm going to bug you about it. I think it's utterly
Right.
fascinating.
Oh, it is. It's one of the biggest regrets that my computer failed there, because it's something that I've been trying to push forward and explore, and I sort of lost a lot of the research.
One more question before we go to, and just kind of, I want to talk about Thailand and the scene there a little more.
Sure.
What is your favorite underappreciated mushroom that you?
I love Amanita muscaria. I think Amanita muscaria is a delicious edible if treated correctly, and nobody really eats it, and it's funny. It's like, oh, but it's toxic, and you're like, yeah, so is raw chicken. Like if you don't know how to prepare it right, then you can be in danger. But if you do know how to prepare it right, it's an absolutely delicious mushroom. And I see someone in the comments said they just tried it and it was great. I completely agree. If you boil it in significant amount of water, the water soluble chemical, and here's where chemistry comes in useful. We know that it's water soluble. So if you boil your mushroom for a good, and I think it's more the volume of water rather than the time you boil it, and dump that water out, that mushroom becomes like a crispy, like I hesitate to say buttery, but it has this just incredible flavor, and it's quite crunchy, and I think it's one of the best mushrooms out there, frankly.
I wanted to eat more of them this summer, and I hate to say it was so dry in Colorado. You couldn't even find amanitas in Colorado this year.
That's what
everywhere.
Yeah, I presented to Pikes Peak last week, and everyone was lamenting that there was no mushroom season in Colorado this year.
Yep.
Which, I guess that's fine. If there's no Telluride, then then there's no mushrooms. Like that's.
All right. So just to kind of wrap up here and talk a little bit about Thailand, tell us a little bit about the foraging season there, and I would like to hear more about your kind of cooking projects.
Yeah. Well, I can share this. I will share with you what I've been up to here. Let's see. Let's do this. So being that I can't work here in Thailand. So I have been diving in my home kitchen and been very lucky to have several moms and grandmas instruct me on the ways. But this is a cookbook that I've been putting together. As you can see, it is quite extensive at this point. I think I'm almost at 40,000 words. This is something that I am actively working to be publishing. and it's got some really fun. It's sort of more of a journal style, which is sort of me coming up to northern Thailand and realizing that I've never actually cooked Thai food before. And that northern Thailand isn't completely new. What you're looking at here, these pictures, is these amazing kunyai, the grandmothers, who are drinking their own home distilled rice liquor, lao khao, and catching these little fish that are only available in this one part of Thailand, in this like mountainous little village, sticking them on a stick and then grilling them and eating them whole with their lao khao and chilies. And that is like a super hyper regional dish, you know, really fun. I mean, so this book really goes into, so that little point up there is basically where I am in Thailand, and you can see how far north northern Thailand can truly be. This entire border is Burma here. So, and then not far over here is Bangladesh. So the food here is incredibly different than Thai food that you're used to. And so this is my dive in. So really been working on this every day, and now sort of working on the let's see, where's the glossary? This one's pretty fun here. Sort of learning Thai, and starting to fill in more information. Come on, Google, do your thing. And really learning how to like speak Thai and to ask these grandmas specific questions on ingredients, because I think one of the funny things is when you don't know a language and they're like, oh, this dish is that, and you're like, oh, that sounds like a dish I should learn. But if you speak English, you realize you're like, spaghetti with meatballs isn't a dish, you know, or it's not like a recipe. It's just sort of like a thing that people make, and everybody makes something different. And the same is true in Thailand. There's a sort of a lexicon of foods that they eat. And within those ranges, it's vast. So this is one of the projects I've been working on.
We've been fortunate enough to get access to some of your recipes during this process.
Yeah, well, I actually wrote,
I wrote
two cookbooks. And the first cookbook, Quarantine Cookbook Volume 1.
It wasn't a cookbook. It was a quirkbook.
Cookbook, yeah. I changed this one to make it more searchable in SEO. But yes, the Quarantine Cookbook Volume 1 I wrote while we were in lockdown down on the coast, and I ended up cooking for the 10 people I was with for those 7 weeks and taking pictures of everything and recording everything. And if you go to thefoodbender.com/recipes, we can throw that up in the chat if you'd like. You can download a free copy of that first cookbook. And so the one I'm working on for Northern Thailand is a sequel to that one, if you will, sort of what I've been diving into up here. I did bring down this book. So if people are really interested in Northern Thai cuisine, this book is awesome. I mean, totally awesome. This is an expat who lives here, and his is so thorough and so incredible. And so I'm realizing that in writing my own cookbook, to try to compete at all with the knowledge that he puts into that cookbook would be really difficult. And so I'm writing it more as my own journey and exploration and unfolding into understanding from sort of a chef's perspective or a traveling chef's perspective.
And there's another way to get that though too. We've been getting your recipes and ideas over on Patreon as well.
Yeah, right. Patreon is more mushroom focused, and that's sort of so if people aren't familiar with Patreon is a member supported creator page. So people who are writing books, photographers, filmmakers, all manners of folks use Patreon to, so members, I have various levels of membership there. I believe you guys have joined in at the $20 membership range. And so I'll publish essays, just discussions on scientific papers, videos, things that I find, but also like a lot of original content, and then a ton of recipes, you know, as I'm coming up with various recipes that are mushroom oriented. And the idea is that it's a sort of a repository for things that I would like to end up in that Mycophagy book. And so if you go to patreon.com/mycophagybook, you can find, there's several things that are available for the public as well, public facing stuff, and then a ton of stuff like that is available for various groups and various levels of membership. So the up to the $20 membership, 5, 10, or 20, you get access to various things. And
Has that
so
Patreon experience been good for you?
it's a slow crawl. I have currently 10 members that are funding me, which is great. And I think I get $110 a month right now in support of my project, which to me, while it might not seem like a significant sum of money, it is a motivation and a reason to continue, because it means that people are interested in what I'm doing. And so that feels really good. It feels supportive. And now, especially being here in Thailand, where I'm not allowed to work, I'm on an education visa, figuring out how to raise money and to get support. Well, pretty much my work is now researching, writing, and diving in. Let me share also.
Make sure you share it with all panelists and attendees. If you that, Kristen's putting it back in so everybody can see it.
What does that mean? I'm not
sure. Just in the chat.
When I chat?
Over in the chat, when you're typing in links, you're sharing it with panelists, so only Kristen and I are seeing what you're typing.
Oh, I didn't realize that was a thing.
I didn't either.
Is that the same as screen sharing, or is that?
No, you're good on the screen sharing.
Okay, cool. So something else that I've been putting together is a comprehensive list of edible mushrooms in Thailand. This doesn't exist anywhere, as far as I can tell. I did find a poster of edible mushrooms, and a lot of these mushrooms in here come from that poster, which is all in Thai. So it's hard to understand it. And thing with edible mushrooms, and I'm sure people have seen this if they've looked up books, is that 100 edible mushrooms. Some of these mushrooms are edible, but why bother? They're tiny little mycenas that you're never going to harvest anything. It's like it's a novelty that you can eat it. So I think that this is literally every edible mushroom that I've been able to find in the literature, or that I've found while hunting. And so this is a document. I've shared this with my members on the Patreon page. But this is something that I've been working on and putting together, and then really looking forward to, once I'm speaking Thai, to fill out a lot of the more of this information as I start speaking to foragers and getting more information.
You might have a few more years of foraging research to do. That's a lot of mushrooms.
Yeah. It's a lot of mushrooms here. And, this poster that I found and some of the information, it gives you some aspect of where in Thailand it is. Most of it is up here in the mountains. But it's, they're spread around. So some of these are edible, but I don't know that they need to be like in the edible mushroom book that I'm going to put out next year. So I will be writing a book on the edible mushrooms of Thailand and the traditions and cultures surrounding cooking them that I anticipate coming out at the end of 2021.
The talks that you're doing in some of the mycological societies for people that want to learn more, that we mentioned at the beginning, are those more on the Thai mushroom scene that we only kind of have touched on today?
Say that again.
The webinars and talks that you're doing in October and early November in Central Oregon Mycological Club, Snohomish County, Yakima, Arizona, and Cascade. Those are on Thai mushrooms, right? For people who want to learn more.
It's on Thai mushrooms. It's the talk itself is more like my experience in Thailand and uncovering the mushrooms of Thailand. So there's several pictures from where we've been hiking. There's some Thai language in there as well to sort of break down what different words mean in Thai cooking. They have different methods of cooking things here. And breaking down sort of the culture. It's, for me, this has been very eye-opening. My intention was to be living in Mexico at this time. So it's been sort of fun to be in a place that I didn't expect to be, and to dive into the culture and cuisine here with the gusto that I was hoping to do in Oaxaca.
Okay. And I just want to set everybody up, after watching you for now, we know been an hour and 15 minutes, these other sessions at these other societies, it's not a recap of what we did today. There'll be stuff.
No. It's quite specific. It gets into individual mushrooms and recipes and locations. I've got some cool animated maps to kind of zoom in on Chiang Mai and show people what the area looks like. And I'm finally getting into the mycorrhizal tree associations with mushrooms. As I said, I'm not a mycologist. I'm like, mushroom over here, find, eat. But realizing that I need to start learning those, especially for the chanterelles that are coming up right now, which are amazing. Currently called Cantharellus minor, although I found out that that is a mushroom from North America in the Northeast. So if people, are you familiar with Dennis Desjardins? I mean, you would be, because he presented at SOMA, or he co-presented at SOMA with one of his PhDs.
Only,
So
only from there, yeah.
As it turns out, as I was looking up the papers here in Thailand, his name shows up on, I would say 70% of the papers that have been published here. So I sent him an email and I was like, hey, what's up with this? He's like, oh, I've been to Thailand 30 times in the last 20 years. My wife is Thai, owned property in Chiang Mai, helped found the Mushroom Research Center, which is here with Dr. Kevin Hyde. And that's a field area. And so he was able to let me know pretty directly that almost every name for the mushrooms here, scientific name, is incorrect. And it's a very new in the mycological field in the sense of a couple decades. And so now that we're finally getting into do the genetic identification, Thailand is going to have a lot of new mushroom names that are going to be specific to here. You know, they get a lot of Rusula here. And so they're all named after even European names. And so it's a watch this space kind of area. And I did get to go to the Chiang Mai University's microbiome research lab, which is the three folks that were there when I came in were the ones who discovered the Thai white truffle. And so there's a big celebration about that as well. And they're currently working on, they have a black bolete here, which the flesh looks more like a butter bolete. It's quite yellow, just super delicious. And it's called the Phlebopus portensis. Now I'm seeing my share here. Let's see, all panelists and attendees. Look at that. I think this is just a hilarious name. Phlebopus portensis. And it is a gigantic black bolete, and it is it's mycorrhizal until it's not. And like morels, they noticed it was killing the host tree, and upon further research found that it was actually creating these air pockets that allowed insects to get in to eat the roots of the tree that would kill the tree, at which point the mushroom becomes saprobic. And so one of the guys did his PhD on doing a mass production of growing these without the host plant. And so they're currently working on that. And it's really cool. It's got yellow mycelium, and they've got jars and jars and jars and jars of the mycelium that they're cultivating. But the idea that you can actually grow, I mean, these things get to be a kilogram or more, and the fact that we could have that commercially grown is really exciting, because it's, like many porcinis, it's high nutritional content, high protein content, and you can grow them quite large. I mean, they're huge mushrooms, so that was really exciting. And so through Dr. Desjardins, I've made contact with the group here at Chiang Mai University would actually be the ones that are going to be putting out the papers and are actually doing the work. Bless their hearts. So I need to speak more Thai, though. There's English is not a requirement to be in Thailand, and
yeah, not just more Thai, but also spend more time there. It sounds like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I think I need to speak more Thai in order to spend more time there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fascinating. And Chiang Mai is tiny. Chiang Mai is about, I think, 200,000 people. So it's if people are familiar, it's about the size of Bend, Oregon, maybe a little larger than Bend. And then Chiang Mai province has almost 2 million people in it. And so there's a lot of small towns that are spread out throughout the mountains and throughout the areas. And a lot of them have unique properties as well, and unique areas and unique techniques. And so there's a lot to explore here.
How long are you going to be there, do you think?
We just got our stamp for our 1-year education visa. So until the end of next mushroom season, at least.
Okay. So you're going to stay there and all the way through the next year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason to come back to the States at this particular moment. We packed up our house to move to Mexico as it was. Um, and, unfortunately, Mexico being America's neighbor and mismanaged as well is having some trouble with the COVID stuff as well. And it just didn't seem like a good time to show up as a foreigner in a community since we were already here.
Yeah.
So it's unexpected, but I would say that if there were ever two sister cities, Chiang Mai and Oaxaca City are so similar. And so it's been a really awesome experience to sort of be like, well,
Really
here
worked
we
out.
are. Now, I've actually been told that, and this was by in Portland, Oregon, there's a really great sushi place called Sushi Mazi, shares my last name. And apparently in Thai, Mazi means, well, here we are. So I may have brought this on myself by my hand, but well, here we are. I mean, it was an opportunity dropped in our lap. And, Kim, my fiance, is really into textiles and fashion and whatnot. And so she's actually been able to start a business, which has been really awesome and to watch grow. And we are currently selling face masks made by local women artisans here. And they are super high quality. It's a fair trade, nonprofit women's artisan collective that we're working with to manufacture these face masks, both from fabrics that are woven on literally backstrap looms in people's kitchens, and then upcycled costumes from the Hmong people here. And they are it's really, really fun. So if people want to check that out, I just shared that link. Okay. You can check out the mask. And if you go to Traveling Traders website, you can read more about the project and what's happening.
I'm just going to say that for everybody, so when we put it on YouTube later, they might not see these notes. It's travelingtradersbazaar.com. It was about the story, and you can go to etsy.shop/travelingtradersbzr to purchase some of these.
And if you go to, and you can also type in artisanfacemask.com. We bought that one up as well. And that'll take you to the website. Has more information. Etsy is more of just a shop. But we have about 65 different styles of masks on there for men, women, and children. So it's been very popular so far, and the women here are so thankful. Thailand on October 8th, Thailand will allow the first 120 tourists to arrive since March. And I think they're looking to let in 1,200 tourists a month. That is down from 3.5 million tourists a month. Thailand is based on tourism. There is no money here right now. And so these women told us, we've purchased from them about 1,200 masks now. And they said that we are one of their largest partners this year, which is tiny. We are making a big impact by buying 3 masks. Like, that makes a huge deal for these women that otherwise have zero income right now because they're based on selling their products to tourists. And so it's more than just, face masks for people at home and really cool and really great, making them a fashion accessory, but it's literally helping people here that otherwise have no way of making income. So it's been really gratifying to be able to have that impact, because even boutiques that send out buyers aren't able to come over now. Nobody can come here. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be here. It's tourist free. It's relatively empty and quiet. So
yeah, that's nice. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap up. If any of anybody watching wants to say anything in the chat here to Zachary, it's a good time.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up. Looks like Kathy's saying thanks. Kathy Conroy. Nice interview. Yes, it was a great interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
For, waking up early this morning. And
now, one thing we didn't talk about is your upcoming book. Really, we kind of barely mentioned it, but I mean, congratulations. That's incredible. I'm really looking forward to having the hard copy. I've perused the PDF copy that you sent me, but to have the book in hand, I'm really looking forward to that, and I will share with you my mailing address so I can get it out here.
We'll be mailing it out to you in about 2 weeks. We've heard they're now in the warehouse here in the United States, and now they're getting ready to ship them out. Or I think tomorrow they're in the warehouse.
How have pre-orders been?
Pretty good. We
Great.
had a big allotment ourselves, and we sold them out, and we had to order more.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So is that considered second printing? Are you in your second?
No. I think they printed 5,000 or 6,000 in the first printing. We didn't.
Okay.
We only sold a couple hundred.
Yeah.
Through our network.
Yeah, right.
Pretty well received.
Well, I mean, I will promote it. I can actually add a panel to all of my talks coming up in the next several weeks. I mean, not a bit narcissistic of myself because I'm in the book, so that's exciting. But also because I think that to have a cookbook that's with foraging and preserving whatnot, that's actually a really unique among mushroom cookbooks.
And the stories. We really like the stories part of it.
I don't hear you anymore.
Talk about people's stories was fun.
Can't hear you.
I don't know what happened.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying it's fun to talk about the stories too. To interview so many accomplished foragers and chefs and just normal people too.
Right. Sure.
And kind of hear about what fires them up about mushrooms was something that really inspired us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I think David Aurora puts that really well. Is that pictures of mushrooms are interesting. Pictures of mushrooms with people in them are fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's like it's that connection of people to the experience of finding the cooking and all that really makes the knowledge of it come alive.
Okay. Yep. And as Kristen said, we got Beth Bilodeau. I always say the last name wrong. Bilodeau. She's on here. Julie Schreiber. They're two of the contributors to the book that are also watching this. So hi, Beth, and hi, Julie. It's nice to have you. It'd be exciting when that gets out. So I think we're going to wrap it here, guys. And thanks again. And don't forget, we're going to do Mycophagy with you next time, and that's going to be awesome.
I just want to respond real quick to Roxy here. The science does not agree with your assertion that the face mask doesn't stop the virus particles, because the virus particles aren't free floating in the air. They're in water droplets, and the several layers of cotton have been shown to very effectively reduce the spread of the virus. So I just want to nip that in the bud, and say that is a cute talking point in terms of the virus micron size, but it is inaccurate and it is not true information.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.